This here is a brand new Ferrari 296 GTB that was manufactured, put on a boat, and landed just a few days ago. And before it got to the dealership, it came here. So today I'm going to show you what a brand new $500,000 supercar looks like when it leaves the manufacturer and what the dealership must do before they give it to the customer. Completely insane what you're about to see. That and a whole lot more in this episode of Drive and Protect. Big thank you to our sponsor, Factor, for helping us out with today's video. More on this during lunch. The 296 GTB, which stands for Gran Turismo Berlinetta, was described as the first real Ferrari with just 6 cylinders. So to make up for that, what some purists would call blasphemy, they doubled down and then put a plug-in hybrid system that's jammed between the engine and the gearbox. Then somehow tweak the exhaust to sound like a V12 with a little bit of a sore throat, which is pretty amazing considering it's only down 6 of the 12 cylinders. Watch until the end to hear the sound, but all the issues in the build quality you're about to see on a $500,000 car kind of, not completely, but kind of goes away when 819 horsepower are at your disposal. Before we put her up in the air, remove the wheels, and then give it its first bath, just take a look at what was left over from the manufacturing process. Now remember, this came off the boat and was left untouched and then came to the ammo studio. Just crazy. Leftover white residue in the emblems and pretty much every seam on every part of the car, which looked like wax, but as I'll explain later, it's actually compound and it's way harder to remove once it's dried. Within the paint itself, there are swirls, tons of light scratches, which aren't a big deal and fairly common. It's not ideal, but again, it's not uncommon. However, if you look closely, you can see pigtails and sanding marks left in the paint from defect removal at the factory. In other words, the paint department had some issues, whether it was paint runs or dust nibs or just inconsistent paint texture. Something needed to be sanded to repair it, but that process wasn't finished all the way to the end, thus leaving behind these issues you see now. Check out the black piano roof. Now, this is bad even for Ferrari standards. We're gonna take a deep dive in all of these and more, including the forgotten sanding marks on the inside of the door frame. I can't make this up. But for now, I need to give the GTB a healthy wash to get an idea of the severity of all the damage. See, these are rubber. These aren't plastic. That's interesting. Just in case they hit anything, it's gonna wear away without actually breaking. I've never seen that before. So, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 screws. So anything goes wrong, pull it off and you're good to go. But look at that windage. Very cool. They must replace these every week. If you notice, I power washed the seams with warm water for a bit longer than usual to see if I could get lucky to remove or at least loosen what I thought at the time was wax, and it wasn't, and I didn't. To dry the paint, I used a blue Ultra Plush towel, again along with a warm air blower. I'll put links to everything I'm using in the description down below. Now, because this Ferrari has so many grills that are a pain to dry, I'm using the MetroVac Super Vac and Blow with 2 4-peak horsepower motors. One is for drying, and of course the other is for vacuuming. Mine's mounted to the wall, so it's out of the way, or you can use it on the floor. Either way, it comes with a 30-foot hose for vacuuming and a 10-foot hose for drying. If you're looking for a vacuum or a blower, check out metrovac.com and use code AMMO at checkout to save 10% on any of their vacuums and any of their blowers. Again, it's American made, it's all hand built, they're really good people, so make sure you give them a look. Now at this point in the process, I can't help but think about the question that I run into every time I work on a supercar, especially Ferrari, is who is ultimately responsible for the look with respect to detailing of a $500,000 car? Is it the manufacturer? Is it the dealership? Or is it the client? So think about that for a second, but let's recap a little bit. As I washed the car, you can see in all the creases and seams, there was something that looked like wax. It turns out it's not wax, it's compound. And the reason that they compounded it is because they have sanding marks everywhere. So when the paint came out of the factory or whenever that was, they said, oh, there's dust nibs, there's imperfections, and we're gonna sand it down. Not totally uncommon, but okay. And then they went back in and they compounded it afterwards and left all the residue everywhere. So immediately I'm going, okay, there might be an issue with this paint. Now, the two things to think about is either their detail department in Italy wasn't where it needed to be, meaning they left the last sort of 10% of the vehicle looking, you know, there's wax everywhere and there's pigtails everywhere, so not in the best condition. Or the second thing that could have happened is expansion and contraction. We've talked about this before. If you sand the vehicle down, and let's pretend that these are the sanding marks, right? And then the paint heats up like this, and then you polish, it looks fantastic because you're looking down on it. You're going, oh yeah, okay, it looks fantastic. And then as it contracts, it comes down like that and the marks pop out. That's probably what happened here. A quick analogy is you go to the gym, you go like this, your muscles get huge, and then when you get home, by the time you get home, all of it has contracted. That concept here. Fine. Now the car comes overseas, goes to the dealership. The dealership has another sort of issue to run into that most people don't talk about. Right off the bat, the dealership mindset typically, and this is from experience, not every single dealership, but from my experience, the dealership thinks of the detailing department as a lost leader. It's just kind of a pain in the butt. We're in the way all the time. I have 50 cars I have to get out. Go, 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 go. And the concern is not necessarily the quality of the vehicle, not every dealership. It's how fast can we move the metal so that they can make their numbers. Let's pretend you have 9 lives on paint here, right? And then I come in and I go, and I take out the little things, and now I've taken to about 8.5 or 8.7. At a dealership that's got to move, they're going to go in and grind, and now you're down to 7. And as a client, if you're watching this, my suggestion is as soon as that comes off the boat and it goes on the trailer, and you go to your dealership and you look at all of this and decide, hey, it looks perfect. The dealership is good to wash and wax it and do some minor things to it and get it out and save your cash. Totally fine. Or in this case, looking at it and going, oh my gosh, we have to take it to an actual surgeon or a specialist detailer so that I don't ruin a very expensive paint job. So ultimately, I don't know who is responsible, the manufacturer, the dealer, or the client, but either way, in this particular case, clearly the client is responsible because they brought it to me and I'm charging the client, I'm not charging the dealer, and I'm not charging the manufacturer. But I don't know what you guys think about that, but it seems a little bit crazy for $500,000. We have these marks that shouldn't exist, but for now, I'm gonna go in, make this thing perfect, keep as many lives on as possible, and hopefully take this thing for a ride. Step 1 is the 6-inch shear cutting pad. Notice the Buff Daddy logo on the back of the package. Without KB, it wouldn't have happened, so a big thank you to the daddy. To cut the paint, I first put a new pad on the machine, then I run it quickly to help blow out the fibers. Otherwise, you can get a bit of a mess on the paint as the fibers fly out from manufacturing. Again, this is normal, but just do that first. Then prime the wool strings by hand, of course, with a glove on. A few more dots of exfoliate afterwards, and then you're off to the races. All right, guys, I'm behind the camera right now. I just did this section. Here was being a little bit more difficult, but I wanted to show you something. I'm gonna have to get the other lens to prove it to you. There's a spot right where my tip of my finger is. Right there, there's an imperfection deep underneath the clear coat. And I can tell now that the paint, when it came out right there, it came out of the gun as it was being painted, and a little blob went on there, and I tried to sand it, but that was beneath the clear coat. So this just indicates to me as I'm going through and really refining this and be able to see through the paint, meaning through the clear coat, there's little issues within the actual color coat there. So I can only imagine what I'm going to find, but it's just an overall example of kind of the level. I guess more of the manufacturing and time, effort, and money has been in the interior and the engine and the look and the feel, but it's like, man, it's just a little bit concerning for $500,000. That I think people you have the right to be this fastidious on a car. This is an investment. This is your love. This is all your work and heart. Life is short. You should have really nice paint on a $500,000 car. But anyways, I can't get that out is my point. That's under the clear coat. Nothing can be done. Here's a great example of a 50-50 on just one area of the hood. Again, you can really see the sanding marks everywhere on the paint when it's delivered from the factory. And just wait until I get around to the other side of the Ferrari, even crazier. On the back side of the Ferrari, of course, I found even more compound residue, but I also found on the black air brake overspray just to add more fuel to my fire. Okay, at this point, we're about halfway done and the Ferrari is looking fantastic. So that means it's lunchtime. And for lunch, I just don't have the time to go out, get fast food, spend more money and eat something that doesn't make me feel real good. Instead, what I do is I get Factor delivered right to the studio. I run it upstairs. 2 minutes later, I have a gourmet meal and it's fantastic calories for me. Why is that important? Well, when I'm polishing a $500,000 car, I need my brain power so I don't actually cause more damage than I'm taking out. Now, the really cool part about Factor is they have 35 plus options and 45 plus add-ons, and they have smoothies. I love my smoothies. I actually put it right over there, and in between detailing, I pound it. It tastes really great. Plus, they have things like keto, calorie smart, chef's choice, vegan, and my favorite, protein plus. So with that being said, let's head upstairs for lunch. Head over to factor75.com or click the link below and use code AMMO50 to save 50% off your first Factor box. Now, back to lunch with a view. So right after lunch, I came down here and I checked out the whole side of the car just to kind of get the game plan for compounding and polishing and taking out the pigtail marks that are on the rest of the vehicle. And then I noticed this right here. This panel right behind the driver's side door is completely different than this one with respect to the orange peel. This has crazy orange peel and an actual drip mark in the paint versus the door that's relatively flat. It just has swirls and things from the sanding. That is why they had to go in and sand everything. That's why I'm finding these marks. Again, you don't really see it until you finally get into it. You go like, oh, this makes total sense now. The problem is they forgot to do this area. So that means I now have to go not just from like the dealership side that we talked about before. I gotta go all the way back to the manufacturing and sand this side so that it matches. And now the other question, I was like, okay, wait a second, maybe the other side also has the same marks. It doesn't. So the other side is equally flat of the passenger side door. Same thing, like they match. Basically, I'm gonna flatten everything with 1500, then go back in with 3000 grit on a palm sander right here. I don't have it hooked up right now, palm sander, and I'll do right on this line. You can almost see that somebody forgot to do this. Then I'll compound and polish just like the rest of the car. So now we found the culprit. The issue was this had orange peel all over the place. So they need to rethink about how that paint is coming out of the gun all the way back at the factory. After sanding with 1500, then finishing out with 3000 grit, I compounded and polished with exfoliate and the shear and waffle pads respectively, as I had done on the rest of the vehicle. And now it looks like what you would have expected from a $500,000 car. On the black piano roof, no orange peel, but again, swirls, scratches, and sanding pigtails everywhere. Once I was done working the paint, I took a break from the machine and then coated the calipers and the wheels with Ammo Gillette Pro wheel coating to make cleaning them in the future much easier, then replace them on the car and torque them down. Okay, at this point in the process, normally I would work on the interior, take all the plastics off, vacuum, etc. It's a brand new interior, it should take 5 minutes. When I opened the door, I found yet another example of some issues on this vehicle. You can see right here, there is a square that has been wet sanded, but it actually hasn't been backed out. It hasn't been compounded and polished. Again, an indication that the paint over here that I then had to sand a little while ago to match the door, something was going on this side and steps were missed. Maybe the dealership could have corrected this, but I do think this is a little bit above and beyond what a dealership should be doing on a car that comes off the factory, in my opinion. So right here, you can see there is a square, wet sanded, and I now have to go back in and probably finish with 3000. I'll see how it goes. Compound and polish for sure, again, to match everything else. If you can look here, and all the seams, now this is after I've washed it, the compound is just so thick, it's incredibly hard to get off. I'm gonna have to use like a degreaser and then get in there and just kind of rub it a little bit with my hand because I'm polishing the rest of this right now. I'm not really too concerned about scratching it because I'll go in and compound and polish it again. And then all the way in here, really, really thick compounding marks. So the moral of the story is this car somewhere along the line had some paint issues. Totally okay. What's not kind of okay is that it wasn't completed. It didn't go through the entire process to completion. And so that's what's abnormal in this process. So let me clean this up. I'll get this, this isn't a huge deal. And then I'll clean up the interior, put a coating on it. And then more importantly, what Ferrari is known for, I want to hear that engine go, and we're going to go for a drive. First, I masked off the leather on the door, then used a 3-inch shear cutting pad on an LHR 75 pneumatic to remove the fine sanding marks, and then followed up with a straight cut waffle pad and exfoliate. Having a straight cut or a non-flared pad in these tight spots is ideal because you avoid any karate chopping motions that may damage the side of the paint, or in this case, the side of the door panel. To remove the hardened compound, I used a brush, rapid remover, and my finger before cleaning the door and interior with lather and a microfiber towel. On the inside of the Ferrari, of course, it wasn't as bad, but believe it or not, there's actually the same compounding residue left behind. Yes, on the inside of the car. Look at the cup holder carbon fiber. Seeing compounding residue on a Ferrari everywhere on the exterior surface, that's one thing. It's a huge pain in the butt, but it's one thing. Having it on the inside of the door frame, okay, that's another thing. However, having it on the inside of the car, that's where we cross a line. All right, at this point, we just installed a clear bra, and when you do that, obviously there's some fingerprints and oils on there, so we're gonna remove all that before we put on a Reflex Pro. To do that, we're gonna be using a little ISO wipe down, 50/50 ISO and water, and you're good to go. Reflex Pro 2 is incredibly slick and hydrophobic, making future cleanings much easier and usually only requiring a healthy power wash if it's not super dirty. I do this personally about once a week or so. I just power wash my car, then I hydrate and protect it, and I'm good to go. After some mud tire dressing, we pulled her outside to see the final results. Now, despite the Ferrari having orange peel, leftover compound, and just not really great paint, Ferrari somehow makes up for it with this. Woo! My gosh, that is fast. This thing is absolutely amazing, a hammer. Now, years ago, I drove the Scuderia, and I remember it punching me in the back every time I shifted, and I have that same feeling here, but way more refined. Rear mid engine, rear wheel drive, extra special, not all wheel drive. Then we have something very interesting. It's a hybrid, of course. There is an electric motor in between the engine and the gearbox. Now, that electric motor produces about 165 horse, the engine about 654, for a total of 819. And you can absolutely hear it and feel it. Now, I've driven a lot of Ferraris and, more importantly, a lot of Porsches, and I love turn-in. Everything for me is turn-in. This is absolutely on rails. Probably right now, in terms of what I've driven, the tightest steering I've ever driven. Incredibly tight. Now, other things I like about this is the steering wheel. For some reason, I'm a little bit picky about my steering wheel. There's a little indentation over here. I don't know what it is. I absolutely love it. The second thing, I'm gonna take this off because we're coming to a light right now. Look at this. Finally, someone smart. Besides the stupid dinging, I understand what you're saying, Matt. Do you see this part right here? This part has rubber on it. We'll show you in a second, so I don't have to hear all that. And why is that important? That's important because you have carbon buckets here. And every time you go in and out, you hear the ding and the scratch, and it drives, certainly someone who's detail-oriented, completely insane, and you probably put marks in it. They put little rubber there. That's very smart. I like stuff like that. So there's little things in here that I think they did incredibly well. Again, the paint, an issue, they stubbed their toe, whatever. All of a sudden, when you're driving the car, it's completely forgiven. Does that shift? Oh, like a race car. She's back.
She's back.
What do you think, bud?
How's it going?
Looks good, right?
Looks amazing. It's, I hate to say this, it's a different car.
Yeah.
From the day it got off the carrier at the dealership and we looked at it and said, okay, it's got to go to Larry.
Great color, great calipers, way to match it. I love that.
Yeah, the calipers took forever. They won't do them in Maranello, just like with the 488, which is sitting back there on the cover. Yeah, I had them done here as well. They won't do the green, so we we took the lid off.
Yep.
The gas tank, perfectly matched it. I think you know the guys that did it.
Yep.
And they perfectly matched it. They powder coated the wheels. You got it ready, and as soon as it has a radar, and then I'm going like a bat out of hell in this thing because that's what it deserves.
It is crazy fast. I don't know. That's what I've heard.
But you've heard it's crazy?
I've heard it's crazy fast.
Anything won't show up in a video.
Not
gonna get pulled over.
Absolutely not. I've heard it's fast. But
you've heard it's fast.
What else do you have coming in?
So currently on boats. This is funny. So currently on boats, Cayenne Turbo GT.
Okay.
Rolls-Royce Spectre.
Okay.
Ferrari SF90.
That'll do.
Pure Sangue.
Okay.
812 Comp A. We're going to be one of the first Comp A's in the country. The comps are here, first Comp A. And Daytona SP3.
Ooh.
I have five cars on 5 different boats in the Atlantic Ocean right now.
Nice.
So a little crazy. So within the next couple of weeks to a couple of months, you're going to be very Ferrari busy, and you're going to get your first Rolls Royce from me to do, because this one's coming here. It's not going to Florida.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What do you got for me now, though?
Okay, so because of all this stuff coming in, as you notice, the garage is a little sparse.
A little bit.
A little sparse. Some stuff has disappeared appropriately, and what we've decided to sell, because everybody's been clamoring for years.
Sure.
The NSX.
Let's take a look at it. What's the plan?
So, there's only a few Amola Orange Gen 2 cars in the country. I've had this one a really long time. It's in amazing shape, super low miles, perfectly maintained, and it's not getting the love from me it deserves.
Right.
With everything else coming in. So you got to do it.
Yeah.
Paint, interior, engine bay. Make sure she's as perfect all the way around.
Yep.
We'll get her up on Bring a Trailer, and we're going to get her sold.
Yeah,
right?
Man.
So it's time for her to get appropriately loved by the next home.
I can't wait to bring this in. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're a good man.
Well, guys, there you have it. We have the NSX coming up very soon. And if you're interested in finding it a new home, have a car that needs to be cleaned, or want to learn how to build your own detailing business, visit ammonyc.com or shoot me an email at larry@ammonyc.com. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for everyone who supports the show, and I'll see you guys soon.